In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this cute Halloween cat in Procreate step by step. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial, and I'll walk you through every single step. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. For today's video, we're going to need a few supplies, and I have listed all of them in the description as well as the pinned comment. And there is a free traceable for you with the color palette. You can get that in the pinned comment and description as well. So let's begin. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to be using the blank canvas that comes with the pencils pack because it has a little bit of a paper texture. And what I want to do is just swipe to the left on it and duplicate it. That way I'm not touching the original paper canvas that comes with the pack that I'm using. I'm just gonna tap here. The next step is to import the traceable into the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import it right at the very top. So just tap here so that now if we import something, it will end up in the layer above. And then go to the actions menu and tap on add and then insert a photo. It's been imported. I'm going to zoom out. So if you zoom out, you will be able to see that there is a color palette available for you at the top, and then the traceable is in light gray. Okay, so here is our game plan. So we are going to start out by coloring the background in cream, and then we're going to color this oval right here in black, and then we're going to start working on our cat, and then we'll do the other details like the stars and everything else. So that is our game plan, and there are chapters and timestamps in one of the comments below. So if you want to skip around, you can do that too. So let's go to the layers panel and let's go to the paint here layer, which is between the paper overlay and the paper background. And for this, what I'm going to do is going to zoom in and press and hold so I can grab that cream color. Now I'm going to go into the brush library and I'm using my pencils pack, which is available in the description, and I'm going to actually use one of the brushes at the very bottom. It's the line fill brush, so that's kind of what that looks like, and I'm going to color in the background with that. So everything around this oval. So let's zoom in and I'll show you what this brush does. So it creates, kind of hard to see with a lighter color, so actually let me show you with a darker color first. So it creates this kind of a look as you move the pencil. If you use really hard pressure, it looks a bit different, but I'm going to use light pressure and then just color in the background. So I'm going to go back to that color that I had. So it was this one. And I'm just going to gently move back and forth and color it in. Okay, so I have finished coloring in that background. It's meant to be very subtle because we're going to have more details in the middle, but if you want to see what the texture looks like, that is what it looks like. You see some of the paper peeking through. I kind of like that look. It's a nice texture. Okay, so now that we've colored the background, the next step is for us to color this oval, and we're going to do it in black with the same texture. Now, there are a couple ways of doing this. One, I could just start using the brush and fill in the oval and then erase any of the areas which kind of go outside the oval. And I can consider erasing all of the elements as well. I don't particularly like to do that, so I'm going to do things a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is go into the layers panel, and we're going to do this on a separate layer. And I am going to go into the pencils pack. I'm going to go to this basic Sketch A brush. It's a very basic brush that is a thin line, and I'm going to create a shape for the oval without all of the elements, and then I'm going to fill that in. You'll see what I mean as we go through this step. So make sure you have basic Sketch A selected. I have the smaller preset size, which is 25. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around this oval and create that outline. Okay, and then now that we've made the shape for the oval, what I want to do is just go around the major elements, just around them, not within them, just around them. Okay, so basically what I've done is I have gone around the oval, I've gone around every single element, and I've made sure that every single shape is closed. Don't leave any gaps. So just make sure it's completely closed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop. So do you see what we've done here is we've basically created that oval. It's filled with color, but it's not on top of our elements because we don't want our elements to be colored. So this is how I would do it. Now I might be thinking, well, how do we use the line fill brush on top of this? So what we want to do is first, let's just change the shape. If any parts of our oval feel a little bit off, now is the time to just correct it. So I'm just going to do some slight corrections. So what we're going to do is go into the adjustments panel. We're going to go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and we're going to make this white. And now we can add on our texture with the line fill brush. So I'm going to create another layer on top and make it a clipping mask so that anything I do in this layer will show up on this shape underneath. And I am going to go back to that line fill brush that we used originally. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing we did with the background, which is to start filling in with some of this interesting texture. And as I said earlier with this brush, if you press really hard, you will see less of the texture, but if you press lightly, you'll see more. So basically what I'm going to do is now I'm just going to go around all of these elements and color it in to my liking. You can leave more gaps, less gaps, totally up to you. Okay, so the next step is to start coloring in the cat. We're going to color in the cat's head and the little paws. So we are going to do that with this color right here. So press and hold, you can pick any color that you like. I'm going to pick this one. And then I'm going to select Soft Pencil C. It's just after the sketch brushes. That's the brush. You can pick any brush that you like. And we are going to color this in another layer. I like to color everything in a new layer. That way I have control. And we are going to move this layer right above this cream colored layer. Let me tell you why. If I start coloring the cat right now, do you see, like if I go outside the bounds of the cat, it's going to show up on that black layer and I don't want that. So we're going to take this layer, hold it, and then we're going to move it right above that layer where we did the cream background. So now if we were to color outside the bounds, we're not going to see it. It's not going to cover our black. So with this brush, you just want to start coloring in the cat. I'm going to leave some gaps just to give it a more interesting feel. Okay, so at this point, if you want to see what your painting would look like without the traceable, you can just go to the top where you had the traceable. I'm just going to rename this actually, so it's easier for us to remember where the traceable was. Traceable. There we go. And I'm going to turn it off. So now we can just kind of see what we're working with. So do you see I left gaps and that creates an interesting look. But if you don't like the gaps, you can fill them in a little bit too. It's totally up to you. It's about the vibe that you like. I kind of like some of these gaps just to give it a more hand-done look. Okay, so I'm going to turn that traceable back on. Now we're going to color in the dress of this cat. So new layer, and I'm going to pick this color right here, press and hold. And for the dress, I'm considering maybe using a different brush so that it has a slightly different texture. I'm going to go in with, let's see, the damp pencil B, just so that it has a different texture. I don't want it to have the same texture as the rest of the cat. And I'm just going to start to fill in, just make sure that I'm on the correct layer. And I'm just going to start to fill in, but I'm going to reduce the size a bit. There we go. So with this brush, you get a slightly different look. It's a little bit more wet and not as dry looking as that other brush that we used. So play around with the brushes and use the one that you like for each part of the illustration. Okay, so the dress is done and it has some interesting texture. You can leave some gaps if you'd like. I always like to do that when I'm doing pencil illustrations. Totally up to you. And now what I want to do is I want to color in the tights here as well as the shirt in the same color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab this very light gray, and I'm going to, let's see, going to go to the, let's see, the grainy sketch brush. Totally up to you which brush you choose. I like to play around with brushes every time I make an illustration. And now, again, separate layer, and I'm just going to color in, maybe with a smaller size, size 15. I'm going to color in. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to color in the boots. And I'm going to do that in this color right here. I'll grab that and select any brush that you like for the boots. I will go back to that soft pencil C that we had, and I will color in the boots. I don't want too much texture for the boots. I want to keep them relatively texture free. So I'm going to color it in really tightly, but just some minimal texture. Now I'm going to create another layer, and we're going to color in the pumpkin. So I'm going to grab this color right here, and I'm going to use the same soft pencil C that I had, and I'm going to color in the pumpkin. So what I'm going to do is just turn off the traceable for a second to see what we're working with, because I feel like there was a little bit of a gap remaining and I don't want that. So I'm going to go back in. So sometimes from time to time, just turn off the traceable to make sure that you're coloring in things correctly. Okay, so now what I want to do is color in this part, but I want it to be darker because there would be more of a shadow inside the pumpkin. So I'm just going to do this in a different layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this color that I have here and just go a little bit darker and test it out. I think that's good. And I'm going to color that in here. And also what I want to do is color in this portion here. And I'm going to do that in the same layer. Make that a little bit more dark and something with contrast. It's a very dark brown. And I will turn off the traceable for this so I can really see what I'm doing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is turn that traceable back on. And what I want to do is to this pumpkin right here, this base shape of the pumpkin, I want to add some details. And I'm going to do this with a clipping mask. So I'm just going to create another layer and clipping mask. And I want it to look like it's slightly shiny to one side. So I'm going to grab this color right here and lighten it a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to the pencil set, and I'm going to take soft pencil, actually, let's try soft pencil B, and go up to 100%, and maybe just a little bit lighter, and basically add a little bit of lightness to one side of that pumpkin, and then add a little bit of darkness to the other side of the pumpkin. Just a little texture. This is totally up to you how much texture you want to add. And then what I want to do is I want to start adding in the details of the pumpkin too. I'm going to do that with the tapered sketch A brush. So I want these lines here to be dark so I can see them. So I'm going to grab that color of the pumpkin and go a little bit darker. And then with a smaller size, size 16, just going to add these lines here. And then for the eyes and the mouth, I'm going to go to a really dark color, almost black, and fill those in. Okay, for the next step, I want to add some details to the shirt. I'm going to do this in another layer, and a layer that's on top of the shirt. So make sure that you create a layer that's on top of the shirt. And I'm using the same tapered sketch A brush, and I'm going to use pure white. And I'm just going to make some dots. And they don't need to be perfect. It's totally up to you. Just wanted to add some visual interest to the shirt. So here, I want some darker lines on top of the leggings. I'm going to go in and just create a darker color and just add some lines here. And you can do each color in a separate layer, but I'm going to start to add all of my details in the same layer. It just makes it easier. For the boots, I want to add some details, and I'm going to use the same tapered sketch brush. I'm going to go to almost black and add some details here. So now is the time to start adding details to the clothing. And for this pocket, I want it to be in a slightly darker orange. So I'm going to select this orange. And then what I'm going to do is just go down at a diagonal and then add the details. I want to create a color that has a little bit of contrast. That's good. And then I'm just going to create the details. And then I want to use that same color, that darker color, to add some details here. I want all of these elements to be darker. So now what I want to do is, before I do all the details for the cat, like the face and the paws, we're going to do that last. I want to fill in all of these other elements, and then we'll come back to the cat. We can definitely add a little bit more detail to the pumpkin too. Well, those are the finishing touches. For now, I want to do all of these base shapes, and I'm going to do it all in one layer. So I'm going to create another layer. And for the stars, I am going to get the traceable and grab this color right here for the stars. And I'm going to fill in all the stars. I'm going to do this with our soft pencil A. And then for each star, just to add a little bit more visual interest, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit lighter by dragging the color in the color wheel. And then just with the brush, adding a little bit more texture. And then for the ghosts, I want to use a very pale color, not quite white. These are pure white. You can leave them pure white if you'd like, but I don't want pure white. I want something that's a little hint of gray, like just like that. So I'm going to color in all of these, but I'm going to leave one part, like the side of them, white. So it seems like there's light hitting them from up here. So just going to do that for the little friendly ghosts. All right, so now I'm ready to add some details to the ghosts. So I'm going to start with that, and then we will work on our cat. So for the details, I just want to add the eyes. I'm just going to grab this color here, this black, and then I'm going to go to the basic sketch A brush. This brush is the best I find for details, so I'm just going to use that. Now I think we can start working on the details for the cat. So I'm going to do that in a different layer. And let's just draw in the eyes. I'm going to do the cheeks in. I really like the damp brushes for cheeks, so I'm going to do that. Like that. And this is at size 40. And then now I want to add some details here. So I'm going to do that with that same damp brush. And I also want to add a slight shadow on the chin of this cat. So I'm just going to grab the main color of the cat. And I'm going to go down at a diagonal. This way we're selecting a color that is slightly darker and has a little bit of contrast. And then with that same brush, I'm just going to go in and create a slight shadow. And I also want to add the whiskers. So I'm thinking that maybe the mouth should have been black. So sometimes, you know what, I like to go back and change things. So let's go back to this black and change that mouth to black. Yeah. And then the whiskers I shall do with a different brush, tapered sketch A. this has a slight taper. Whiskers tend to have a taper, so I'm going to do it with the small size. And that way it has a slight taper. So with this brush, to create the taper, start with high pressure and then release the pressure as you move across the screen. So yeah, that's good. And I want to add a little bit of detail here. I'm going to grab this color, go a little bit darker, and then just add some of this detail here. And at this point, if you want, you can add more details on your cat, kind of like this, like little hairs. Totally up to you. You can add some lines to indicate fur. You can add some color here as well. So I'm gonna add some more. And I'm gonna add some details to the paws here. I'm going to go around that. Okay, the next step is to color in the Happy Halloween part, and we're going to do that with the same color that we had right here. And I'm going to turn the traceable back on so I can see what I'm dealing with. And I'm just going to color in Happy Halloween. I want it to have a little bit of texture, so I'm going to go in with the grainy sketch brush and just going to color it in, go with a slightly smaller size, and just color it in. Okay, so I think that is done. So at this point, if you want to add some more details, you definitely can. So for example, in another layer, I could potentially go into the stars and maybe add a touch more detail with a slightly darker color. Just some additional details. But that is totally up to you. I'm going to avoid more details. I think I'm happy with this at this point. And just zoom out and see if everything looks clear. I do feel that it's a little hard to see the color of the boots. I feel like the boots might be a tad too close to the background color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where I had the boots. So it was this layer right here. And this is kind of the advantage of doing things in different layers. So now I'm in the boots layer. I'm going to go to adjustments. I'm going to go to hue, saturation, brightness, and increase the brightness a touch. And zoom out. Do you see the boots look so much better? So sometimes when you've colored something, you may realize that there's not enough contrast and you want to increase the contrast. You definitely can. White boots, I think this is a good color. So this is the point at which you can make some adjustments. I even feel like the cat could be slightly lighter. So I'm going to go to the cat layer and go to hue, saturation, brightness, and brighten up the cat just a notch. I think that's good. So sometimes you may want to go back and change things. Okay, so I think I'm done. I can definitely keep fiddling, but I want to keep this simple. So now let's just zoom in and have a look at what we've created together. So you've got some interesting texture from different brushes. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new and you had some fun making this together. And I will see you in the next video. Happy Halloween. Bye!